Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Gentle Art of Crushing It podcast. My name's Randy Smith, and I'm going to be your co-host today, or your host today. And I'm really excited to have a partner of Impact Equity with me today, Sabrina Guler. Sabrina is the co-founder and COO of Techvestor. She's also a podcast host of Something More, and really excited to have you here, Sabrina. Thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, let's jump right in. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself other than that brief intro that I shared? And we'll jump right in.
Yeah, of course. It's so funny. I'm also a podcast host, and I always find introductions. You're like, where do you start with people that you know so well? My name's Sabrina. I am originally from the East Coast. I spent the last 10 years before getting into real estate and investing in the W-2 world. I used to work for companies like Apple. I have an engineering background. And about 4 years ago, I started really questioning how my W-2 paycheck was going to contribute to my long-term wealth. And I saw all these people around me who were making really great money, $250,000, $500,000 a year in like high director roles in some of these companies. And they didn't know how to invest. And they also didn't know how to build their wealth. And a lot of these people had families, had relatively stable jobs, and had stormed a lot of things like the crash in '08 and even before that. But they still didn't have these answers. And to be honest with you, Randy, I started questioning things. I was like, how come we're not taught these things in school? And how come we're not taught how to make things work for us like taxes, or how to make things work for us like our own money?
Sure.
And I come from two incredible immigrant supportive parents who came to the U.S. with nothing and not even the blessing to be able to speak the English language, and they made their life work here. And I thought to myself, I'm so blessed to have the support, and I have so many things that I consider to be privilege here, despite me not coming from, crazy affluence or anything like that. But I think that if you have a brain and the curiosity to learn and the ability to question things in your life, you're already 10 steps ahead from the person who just accepts things in front of them. Yeah. And so with that in mind, I started questioning a lot of things. Like I was like, well, how come I need to wait for someone to give me a raise? Or how come I need to wait for my paycheck to come in to decide what I want to do with this? Like, am I just spending on rent? Am I just spending on food and occasionally taking a trip every year? Like, what am I doing? And so those basic questions led into even more complicated questions, where I started kind of really thinking about why I was doing what I was doing. And essentially, I had a quarter life crisis because I was about 27 when that happened to me.
Sure.
And I started getting into the world of real estate investing. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are either like in the process of reading a lot of books and processing a lot of information, because there's so much out there as to how to get started, when to get started. And so anyway, that was really kind of a catalyst moment. And I share the details of the story because it really shows the behind the scenes of where I was at and what I was thinking before I started the business that I run today. Yep. And so my first thought process was, where can you start today? Because I think when you consume all this information, you're like, okay, there's multifamily, there's storage, there's real estate, there's stock, there's all these different things that you can invest in. So today, at that point, which was my version of today, back in 2020, I wanted to invest in a short-term rental. One single short-term rental is the first step I was going to take. And the reason being is because it allowed me to make some passive income, take out a second home loan, and potentially also see my parents who were based out here in Phoenix. I was based out in San Francisco because I was working at Apple.
Okay.
And so that first property, it took a lot of guts for me to invest in it. I had no idea what I was doing. Luckily, I had done a lot of research. I bought a great first property, wouldn't buy that property again. But
Okay.
then that allowed me to buy a second property. And that second property really allowed me to confirm that I wanted to do that full time. Like it gave me enough experience to know like, hey, I think I'm going to do this full time. And
Mm.
so I started educating people on what I was doing and being a leader in the space that I was in the W-2 space.
Yep.
And one thing led to another. I started posting on social media about my journey. A few of my posts went viral, which then attracted me to my current business partner today.
Okay.
Literally a cold DM on TikTok is how we started communicating.
So
And
on your part or on his part? I'm just curious.
on his part. So I was posting about how to
Okay.
teach Airbnb. It was brand new. Not a lot of people were doing it. I was doing mini consultations while working my W-2 job. He was raising capital at the time. And he was like, hey, I kind of need an operator.
Uh-huh.
And let's kind of do this fund together. And so at that time, I was in a crossroads. Apple wanted me back in the office. It was like right at the tail end of, or what everyone thought was the tail end of COVID.
Yeah.
And I ended up choosing the harder, more lucrative, wildest path of my life. And
Yeah.
that's how I co-founded Techvestor, which is one of the only passive investment platforms or opportunities out there for investors to invest in high yield opportunities like short-term rentals.
Are you interested in real estate investing but don't know where to get started or think you don't have the time or money? Are you stuck in your W-2 because the golden handcuffs make it hard to walk away? If this sounds like you, check out impactequity.net and schedule some time to talk with the founder, Randy Smith. Randy went from massive income to leaving his W-2 through passive income, and he can help you do the same. www.impactequity.net.
Wow. Okay. So that is a mouthful, and it's inspiring and a little bit scary to hear that story. First of all, that you would actually come from an immigrant, two-parent immigrant background and to land a job at Apple. Most people would kind of just hang up their hat and say, gosh, I've arrived, and ride this thing out for the next, 25 years, and then, have a nice, comfortable retirement. But you actually made the decision to step away from what could be considered a dream job to jump into real estate. And it's interesting. There's some parallels. Like when I was in corporate America working for Fortune 100 company, not quite the size of Apple, of course. But when I stepped away and decided to go full time into real estate as well, a lot of people thought I was absolutely crazy. So I would imagine you heard a lot of that as well. Was that a challenging transition, or were you dead set and confident that this was the right move to make?
Yeah, I'll get a little, philosophical.
Yeah.
I believe that I really do believe that we all know whether or not we're capable of doing more. And I think that's like
Yeah.
a little voice that we have in us that we either push down or other people push down. And I think, it comes up in certain parts of our life. So I knew that I always wanted to become an entrepreneur, be someone who had the opportunity to play around with building businesses and building long-term wealth. So I'll never forget it. My last day at Apple, I would have never imagined my last day at Apple being like this, but I was on a Zoom, just like I am with you right now, with a team I had worked on for several years. And my goodbye was just shutting the lid. And we had like a Zoom party. And yeah, I think everyone, because at the time I had no future, like I had no fund, I had no income, but I had this like core belief that I was going
Sure.
to figure it out. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurs or people that make this decision, it makes them so powerful because you're not swayed by what other people think. You're not swayed by the potential that people categorize you under based on their projected limiting beliefs. Like you are just anchored
Yep.
in, hey, I believe in this. This is a fundamental value for me. And I don't perceive failure as failure. I take it as I'm going to take this experience and turn it into something successful. So yeah, people thought
Yep.
I was bat crazy,
Sure,
including my
sure.
parents, and especially since I had no real future, right? I had nothing
Yeah.
like laid out in the stars for me.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, it's bringing me back. And I left corporate America 2 years ago. And I remember the conversation with my wife, where I had job offers like literally the day after I got laid off, and pretty significant job offers as well. And we sat down and had the conversation of, do we go back to corporate America, or do we do what we truly feel deep down inside that we're capable of doing? And I'm of the mindset that anybody can do more than what they're doing right now. I think we're taught, we're trained, and we're kind of stuffed back into these little boxes that fit better in corporate America than what we can truly do. Because inevitably, we've always got a governor on us if we're in corporate America, is my belief. So kudos to you for taking the plunge at your quarter life crisis. I like that term. I've not heard that before, but kudos to you. So let's dig into that. I'm just imagining, I know my process when I left corporate America, I basically talked with everybody I knew. You had this unique journey where people were likely coming to you with this newfound exposure and success that you're seeing from social media. Was your current partner the only person that reached out, or were there a number of different opportunities that presented themselves? What did that look like?
Yeah. So I had spent a year trying on a lot of different forms and strategies of real estate. So I
Okay.
actually, because I think it's important to talk about the self-discovery phase. I think success is often like we went from A to Z overnight, and then you kind of look at these crazy forms of polarity, and it's so not the truth. But I think for me, I took a year exploring different things. So I got my real estate license. I hung my license at a commercial brokerage for about 3 months. I learned a lot about multifamily deals. I learned a lot about the brokerage world. I learned a lot about multifamily conversions, underwriting those
Hmm.
deals, looking at commercialized pro formas, storage deals. So that gave me a really good understanding of the commercial world. Then, and this is while I'm exploring Airbnb, while I'm posting on TikTok, like while I'm doing all that. I
Okay.
then moved from that and I actually went into the world of syndication. So I had a business partner for a hot minute. That is not my current one today. And
Okay.
we looked at syndicating a couple of deals in multifamily. I explored, raising capital, and that just wasn't a good fit for me personality wise. I never had a
Yep.
sales background. I'm an extremely creative person.
Hmm.
I'm a little bit rebellious in nature. I love, while all the fish are swimming one way, I'm always swimming the other way. And so
Okay.
I don't know, just the sales world just wasn't very comfortable for me. So that didn't work, but I tried it and I was like, okay, cool. Like if you had a sales background, or if you if you have access to a lot of people with capital, like this is really lucrative. This works, right? But it wasn't for
Yep.
me. And then um, I tried to actually syndicate Airbnbs in that mini fund that I started.
Okay.
And my current partners at the time were a little afraid of it because at the time it was like Airbnb during COVID. It was still really unknown. But again, because I'm the fish swimming in the other direction, I was like, you know what? I really believe in this.
Yeah.
And I see so much opportunity. So by the time my TikToks had gone viral and my business partner today and him and I matched, I knew that that was the right opportunity for me because I had tried a lot of different things. And that's
Yep.
why I talk about before, like, let's normalize failure, because in every point of that trial period for me, I felt like a failure, right? Because I tried this
Hmm.
thing and I was like, oh my God, this is not for me. Like I just spent all this time. I just spent all this money. I just tried
Yep.
all these things and like it still didn't work. And then I tried on the other thing. So that's what I mean. Like a lot of people look at me like A to Z in terms of
Hmm.
contrast. And there was a good amount of time where I tried a lot of different things that didn't work for me until I found Airbnb.
Yep. No, and I think that's really important too. A lot of people think that you wake up, you make a decision, you jump in, and everything runs perfectly. And it's, I've been using this saying a lot lately that you can't steer a parked car. You've got to make a decision and take some action, and you can adjust your path. And that might be one adjustment. It might be 100 adjustments, but clearly all of those things that you did up to this point really culminated into what you have now today. And you likely wouldn't be where you are today had you not made all of those other air quote mistakes, and learning things. So very good. You and your partner, you end up connecting. I would imagine it's a virtual connection at some point, but then you probably got to sit down and start your planning sessions. What did those early conversations look like? Was it real clear to you what Techvestor was going to look like, or did you just know that he was really good in one aspect and you were really kind of finding your way as an STR operator, and it evolved, or were there some other ups and downs throughout that process?
I'm a big proponent of like playing the game where you're at.
Okay.
I think we want to do a lot of things in life, and there's opportunity for us to do whatever we want. And I think starting and learning and growing into that, I think, is really big for me. So at the time, I had a very, very strong operational background. It's something that I'm highly proficient in. I can create systems. And to give some context, at Apple, I had a background of managing, I don't know, I had a team of 40 people, 40 engineers, and we built products, and I dealt with a lot of supply chain. So my background was in operations. And so, which is why like syndicating for me was kind of like this alien, because I had just such a different background, right? But the world of managing projects and dealing with chaos was so familiar to me that when I jumped into this business with my partner, with Seif, we just had natural talents off the bat that just were very complementary. I will
Okay.
say I've learned a lot about business partnership just through many different partners I've had. And I don't think it is common to be compatible and complementary. I think a lot of people just jump into things like hoping for the best. And
Yep.
I honestly could write a book about it, because I think there's some nuance behind there that can really hurt the business, not even you, but the business.
Yep.
And so I'm just grateful that we started off very complementary. So I knew I was very good at this. He knew that he was very good at this. And for the sake of this business, it just worked off the bat. Obviously,
Yeah.
you have to have hard conversations, things, you have different ideas, there are like power struggles, like that's in any business. And that those are things that we have a very healthy relationship navigating, but I think it requires a certain level of self-awareness for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And certainly feelings can get hurt along the way. And if you don't have the personality to handle that, it's difficult to be in partnerships, no doubt. So, well, very neat. So you guys come together, you decide to form Techvestor. And for the listeners that don't know, if they've been listening for any amount of time at all with me, they know of Techvestor and know what you guys are doing. But dig in if you can and kind of share, like, what's the secret sauce? Like, why is this thing going as well as it's going and exceeding pro forma and performing much better, certainly than I expected it to perform? Like, what is it that's differentiating you guys in this marketplace today?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. And as someone who came from, again, the corporate background, it's interesting because I think when you come from corporate, at least in my role, you're so used to operating like a lone wolf. Like
Mm-hmm.
someone pays your paycheck, you have your own goals. It's very like independent thinking, and there's an independent hierarchy with corporate.
Yep.
And I think the thing that, so I was used to that. The interesting thing is my partner has a background in recruiting. And so he was used to like building things with a lot of people and like building teams to make things happen. And so when we entered this business, building a team is actually what allowed us to scale. There's absolutely no way that him and I could have taken the credit for where we're at today. It was definitely because of
Sure.
team. So I think the secret sauce, honestly, is the people. People are really hard to replace, and the team is what built the infrastructure today. Now, obviously, I have the operational background and the brain to put people in certain places and scale and drive strategy and all that. But I think it's a business that requires a lot of labor. and a lot of people to believe in what you're building. And so to go from zero, and to give some context to the audience, to 150 properties in 3 years, it'll be 3 years in July. It's just a lot of volume. It's a lot of process that needs to happen. Everyone needs to follow the same rules. Everyone needs to follow the certain process. It was arguably one of the hardest 3 years in my lifetime, for sure, like so far.
Sure.
Just building the business and dealing with a lot of personalities and a lot of disappointments on the way, right? You have people who leave a job on you, or
Mhm.
we were battling COVID, people were getting sick, and time
Yeah.
frames and all that, but we still managed to make it happen. And I think it was, and anyone who runs a business that I know that has multiple people involved, or maybe you're a solopreneur, but you have the right support system in your life, you will have days where you just want to absolutely throw in the towel, and someone comes in and they're like, why are you throwing this out? Like, come on, we got to get up
Yeah.
and keep going. And so
Yep.
that's what our business served for us, right? Like the team members in our business served. As soon as I got really tired, my Austin, my head of revenue, was like, are you kidding me? We're like this close. You got to keep going. So definitely team.
Love it. I love it. So, and yeah, I think you bring up a really important piece, and you and I talked about this a little bit on your podcast, I don't know, in the last 60 days or so, but that roller coaster of entrepreneurship really can weigh on you, and can have, as you mentioned, it's hard to get up certain days. So from a mindset standpoint, other than the team that you're creating around you, what have you done to really create an environment for you to continue to show up and thrive and remain positive for all of your employees and your investors? Like, how are you managing that mindset journey to help you where you are today?
Yeah. So I think there's a two-part answer to that. I'm a big proponent on having a very clear vision and to protect
Okay.
that vision at all cost. So for example, if you have a vision that is so deeply rooted in your values, in your character as a person, in what you truly believe that you are capable of, not what anyone else thinks, what you truly are capable of, then your purpose every morning is very driven by those intentions. And no matter how awful life gets, because there are many days where I've questioned a lot of things, you have that vision to kind of support you. Now, I will say, I said it was a two-part answer. One, because I think in order to have a vision, you need to do a lot of work on yourself. I think a lot of
Yep.
people cap themselves like, well, my vision is this job, and what's the point of doing more? And so I think there's some exercising that needs to get done on an
Mhm.
individual level in order to really expand, to be able to create something that's much bigger than yourself, because I think we're all
Mhm.
capable of doing that. And I think when you create something that is far bigger than you, your anxieties and whatever garbage you deal with that brings you down on a daily basis doesn't pull your vision down, because what you're creating is far bigger than anything that, a mini lawsuit can do, or someone quitting on you, or you
Sure.
running out of money, right? I mean, we've seen it all. So that's my response to that. I think having a very grounded, expansive view on your life helps you through a lot of BS.
Love it. Love it. Are you comfortable sharing your vision for either Techvestor or for the next 10 years for Sabrina?
Ooh, yeah. I think on the Techvestor side, I mean, it's pretty business forward. We are focusing on, it took a minute for us to decide what we were really good at. I think for a
Mhm.
while we were really great at raising capital, and then we had to focus on operating. And those are two very different skills, and both are
Yeah.
equally as hard to master. And both have different spotlight moments at many different times of the market cycles, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. And so I think we're continuing to master, perform, outperform, exceed expectations. And we will continue to do that for as long as the fund and the business exists. So that's like
Okay.
number one, top for us there, 10-year vision. In terms of me, I'm constantly a process. I'm constantly evolving, but recently I've been very focused on introspective work and giving back to community. So I don't know 100% what that looks like. I have some things in the works, but don't want to share it just yet. I'll probably have some formal announcements and stuff in the future, but
Okay.
I'm very focused on actually the type of stuff that we're talking about. I think business, money, and generally lifestyle is just an output of how we see and perceive our own world. And those are dictated by our past experiences and how we've metabolized those things. And so I think that anyone can change and anyone's circumstances can change if they work on themselves first. So my 10-year vision of Sabrina is probably to give back and focus on that part of the human evolution in hopes that it gets people to make a shit ton of money and live lives that they are truly inspired by. But I believe that it comes from you as an individual first.
Yeah, I love it. I like when you mentioned how you metabolize your past experience. That's a powerful statement. I like manifestation. I like the idea of curation versus following the lead or some set that is required you to follow. I'm curious, tying back to Apple, it seems to me like Apple has had somewhat of an entrepreneurial spirit behind it, certainly during Jobs days. Did you see that when you were there as well, or had it evolved to more of this just behemoth of corporate America by the time that you landed there?
I was very lucky because I worked on some of the most innovative products that Apple had. So like the glasses and AirPods before they launched and a lot of products. I worked on a lot of confidential products. So I would definitely say they're very entrepreneurial. They're very design focused. It was as much as I had my existential crisis and I've publicly positioned myself that way from going to W-2 to entrepreneurship, I really enjoyed my time working there because of how they viewed the world and how they looked at things from an innovative perspective.
Okay. So I'm curious, does that tie in a way you guys are leading Techvestor? Because one of the things that really differentiates you guys from a lot of the other mom and pop operators is the design elements and the amenitization that you guys go into with your assets. Do you think there were learnings at Apple that evolved into your ideation of what technology is or what Techvestor is today?
I think in the beginning, so my short answer is yes, for sure. I mean, I led most of the design initially, and then our design concepts and how we set like a standard for the business. Because once you scale, you need standards for everything, even like toiletries and things that you carry in your homes. We definitely had an innovative spirit, and we also looked at what everyone else was doing, and then we also made sure that we did that plus more, or we did the opposite, right, to benefit the business. So for sure, but I think I had entered such a new business with such a different lay of the land that looking back at it, I don't think that was intentional. I just think it's who Sif and I are as people.
Yeah. And quite frankly, what I was attracted to when I first met you guys and first found Techvestor. So it's, I love the spirit that you guys are creating with Techvestor. Certainly the opportunities for returns for our investors, and they're just fun assets to look at and to imagine the type of experiences and memories that are being built with families all over the country. So again, kudos to you and the team and what you guys have built. It's been really impressive to watch the growth over the last few years. Certainly been a lot of fun to be a part of that, just from kind of a partnership standpoint as well. But it's been a lot of fun getting to know you guys and riding at least a portion of that journey with you guys. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we love having you as a partner.
Excellent. Well, it looks like these conversations always go too quickly, but I do like to be respectful of everybody's time, including yours. But I do have a few questions I'd like to ask before we wrap this up, if you've got a few minutes still.
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's jump in if we can and talk a little bit about education in the passive investing space. Coming from corporate America, you certainly learned about this much sooner than I did, but were there specific resources that you leveraged, and are there resources today that passive investors can leverage to start learning more about this space?
At the time, I was such a Bigger Pockets fan. I think like I'm a question asker and I love to read all the typical books that are out there, like some of the common authors, like David Green, I think, right? There's a couple of like fundamental books that I read back in the day, but I'm someone that like loves to just go out in the field and ask as many questions as possible. So leveraging
Right.
resources like that, like online communities, I think is huge.
Awesome. Any online communities that you're aware of in today's environment that maybe the listeners might not be aware of? There's Left Field Investors I hear a lot about. There's 506B that I hear a lot about. Any others that you're familiar with?
Not that are commonly known. I mean, now we have
Okay.
like online communities and we have like, I have friends who have communities for raising capital in particular, and there's so many different niches now, but not off the
Hmm.
top of my head.
Okay. Okay. Good. Let's see here. So, kind of business related, but a little bit different. If you were going to be placing $100,000 investment, but you couldn't put it into your own investments or into Techvestor, where would you place that capital?
If I was trying to get into another level in my life and I just was kind of confused in terms of like direction, I'd either invest in myself,
Yeah.
probably very unpopular opinion, but on like mentors, coaches, right education, some kind of a program. Um, I'm big on that and I still continue to do that
Yeah.
time and time again. Or I'm really liking um, the new wave of alternative investments, which is getting into small businesses and buying small businesses. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
I have not put my own capital yet into deals like that, but it's something I plan on doing this year, if not early next year.
I love it. I love the fact that you answered invest in yourself. And I don't remember who said it, but the old saying, like if the goal was to chop down a tree, spend 11 hours sharpening the axe and 1 hour actually chopping the tree down. Like investing in yourself is sharpening the axe. And it's so interesting that when I was just prior to leaving corporate America, I don't think I'd ever spent a single dollar on personal professional development outside of corporate America. And then the last 6 months leading up to, and then definitely since, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on these types of things. And I heard a quote that said, the business will only grow as fast as you allow yourself to grow. And the growth only occurs with additional investment in education. So thank you for saying that. That's refreshing to hear other people say that as well. And it's a different type of person that's willing to do that than, trying to find the ROI on every single dollar that leaves the bank account. Uh, okay. So one thing we've been spending more and more time on is due diligence. And we've created this 100+ point checklist of due diligence that we go through when we're vetting operators, which Techvestor had to go through all of those vetting questions as well. But are there questions you think that passive investors should be asking that they're not asking? And if so, what are a couple of those?
I'm probably going to give such a different answer here.
Okay.
But I think it's really important to really know your operator, like on a personal level, like understand their intentions, their values as people, and however that's possible, right? Whether it's listening to a bunch of podcasts, or getting to know them in person, or through references or referrals. But I think you're placing your money and your belief in someone, and that person is the business. I
Yep.
think the numbers are amazing and projections are amazing, but at the end of the day, we're in a market dependent business. And you see a lot of people, you see their true colors come out when things don't happen the way that they anticipated.
Yep.
And I think that's essentially what you're sniffing out for, right? That's what that's what everyone's fear is essentially.
Yep.
Is okay. Let me vet the numbers. Absolutely. I mean, we're in a math, business, so we have to.
Yep.
But I think really getting to know the person and understanding their background and how they look at life, and I think those things are really important because those are the people that are making the decisions on your behalf and ultimately going to be helping you or disappointing you. So that's, I don't know if I have like a list of questions exactly there, but I think it's just really understanding people and having a good sense of character.
Yeah. I love the answer. I couldn't agree more. I think anybody can show up for one podcast or a presentation or a webinar, but to sit on the sidelines and watch somebody for 6 months or 9 months or a year and see how they show up when difficult things happen, I think that is the true measurement of ultimately integrity and how people are going to show up when things get hard. So yeah, really, really great answer, Sabrina. I always enjoy our conversations, and there is a much deeper level of you than I initially knew. But it's been really, really refreshing just to get to know a little bit more. So thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, I think one of my missions in life is to kind of, open the veil of this world and give it more depth. Because at the end of the day, I think we're all working towards a similar goal, which is, have fulfilling lives and connect more with ourselves and the people around us. So yes,
Yeah.
it's a capitalistic driven business, but at the end of the day, we're all people. So appreciate that.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. And to the audience, as always, thank you for joining us today. We encourage you to continue your education journey, but more importantly than that, make the decision to make that first passive investment. Both Sabrina and I are convinced that once you do, you will wish that you had just started sooner. So thank you again for joining us today, and be sure to join us again next Thursday for another great episode. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.